November 1st, 1945. Kyushu, Japan. The sea is black with ships. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands. Battleships, troop transports, hospital ships, floating cities of steel stretching to the horizon. The largest invasion force ever assembled by human beings is finally moving. American soldiers lean over railings, staring at a coastline they have been told may kill them before they ever set foot on it. This was not a bluff. This was not a threat. This was the moment the United States prepared to pay for victory with blood on a scale never seen before. History remembers Hiroshima. History remembers Nagasaki. What history often forgets is that both atomic bombs were used, in part, to stop what was already set in motion. An invasion so massive, so violent, that American planners quietly accepted a number that still shocks even hardened historians. 1 million American casualties. Not enemy dead, not wounded civilians, American sons, brothers, husbands, dead or destroyed. And the invasion had a name: Operation Downfall. The American public never heard that name during the war. They were never shown the maps. They were never told the numbers. But inside the Pentagon, inside the War Department, and inside President Truman's inner circle, the math was already done, and it was terrifying. But what if the bombs were never dropped? What if Japan did not surrender? What if the United States invaded anyway and lost 1 million soldiers? That question doesn't just change how the war ends. It changes everything that comes after. American society, American politics, American power, the entire shape of the modern world. Before we go deeper, let me ask you something. If you're holding your phone right now or watching this on your screen, have you subscribed yet? If you haven't, do it now. Subscribe to World War II Dark Secrets. By the summer of 1945, the United States stood at a level of military dominance no nation had ever reached. Its factories outproduced the rest of the world combined. Its navy ruled every ocean. Its air force could erase cities overnight. On paper, Japan was already defeated. But Japan was not surrendering. American intelligence intercepts painted a grim picture. The Japanese government was preparing its entire population for a final battle. Old men, women, teenagers. Bamboo spears were issued. Suicide tactics were normalized. The military doctrine was simple and horrifying. Make the cost so high that America would break. U.S. planners did not underestimate this. They studied it obsessively. Operation Downfall was split into 2 phases, Olympic and Coronet. Olympic would begin with the invasion of Kyushu, the southmost of Japan's main islands. Over 680,000 American troops would storm beaches under constant air attack. Kamikaze pilots were being stockpiled by the thousands, not dozens, thousands. Intelligence estimated that Japan had reserved nearly its entire remaining air force for suicide missions against the invasion fleet. Admirals warned that the naval losses alone could rival the entire Pacific War combined. But Olympic was only the opening act. Coronet would follow months later. The main event, a direct assault on Honshu, Tokyo itself. More than 1 million American soldiers would be committed to that single phase. Entire armies would land simultaneously on multiple beaches, advancing inland through mountains, cities, and civilian populations that had already been weaponized. This was not D-Day. Normandy had surprise, air superiority, and a collapsing enemy. Japan offered none of that. Every beach was expected to be defended, every cave fortified, every road mined, every civilian a potential attacker. The casualty estimates began conservatively, then they rose, then they exploded. Early projections spoke of 250,000 American casualties, then 500,000, Then figures began circulating that were never meant to leave closed rooms. Numbers that assumed fanatical resistance, mass suicide attacks, and civilian uprisings. 1 million casualties. Some estimates went higher, and those were only American numbers. The United States, for all its industrial power, understood what that meant. 1 million casualties did not just mean military loss. It meant political shock. It meant national trauma. It meant a generation carved out of existence. Every Gold Star family would become a symbol. Every city would feel it. Every election would revolve around it. Yet, despite the horror, the plans moved forward, because the United States had reached a point where it could absorb losses no other nation could. Its population was vast, its economy untouched at home, its industrial base immune to bombing. The brutal truth inside Washington was simple. America could survive 1 million casualties. Japan could not survive invasion at all. And so the invasion was authorized. In this alternate path, August 1945 passes without atomic fire. The bombs exist, but are delayed. Political hesitation, weather, technical issues. History doesn't care which excuse is used. The result is the same. Japan does not surrender. The invasion proceeds. When American troops hit the beaches of Kyushu, the nightmare begins immediately. Kamikaze attacks are relentless. Destroyers vanish in seconds. Transports erupt in fire before unloading. The sea becomes a graveyard. On land, resistance is total. Japanese units fight until annihilated. Civilians rush advancing troops with explosives strapped to their bodies. There are no rear areas, no safe zones, no clean victories. American firepower responds with overwhelming brutality. Entire hills are erased, villages are flattened. Napalm turns farmland into firestorms. The United States does not hesitate. It cannot afford to. Casualties climb faster than anyone predicted. Medical units collapse under the volume of wounded. Blood shortages become routine. Replacement troops are rushed in with minimal training. Entire divisions are ground down and rebuilt in weeks. And this is only Kyushu. By the time Olympic concludes, American losses already exceed the worst public fears that never became public. Hundreds of thousands are dead or wounded. Newspapers back home can't hide the scale anymore. Photographs flood the front pages. Funeral processions become daily events. Protests begin. Not against the soldiers, against the war itself. Families ask why the invasion is continuing, why the bombs weren't used, why their sons are dying on beaches most Americans can't even pronounce. But Coronet is already coming. And the United States, having committed itself, cannot stop. Because to stop now would mean admitting that 1 million American lives were spent to gain nothing. And that realization, that terrible, unstoppable momentum, is what truly reshapes history. This is the point where the United States begins to change. Not in victory, not in triumph, but in blood. And the worst is still ahead.
March 1, 1946. The plains east of Tokyo. Winter has barely loosened its grip when the second invasion begins. Operation Coronet was never meant to be subtle. It was meant to be final. 2 massive American armies surged toward the heart of Japan, landing simultaneously on opposite sides of the Kanto Plain. The objective is simple in theory and catastrophic in practice. Capture Tokyo, break the Japanese state, end the war. By now, the United States has already lost more men than in the entire European campaign. The numbers are no longer abstract, they are visible in every town back home. High school graduation classes with empty seats, factories running short of skilled workers, hospitals overwhelmed with amputees, burn victims, and men who will never sleep normally again. America is still powerful, still rich, still industrially unmatched. But for the first time in the war, it is bleeding faster than it can emotionally process. Japanese resistance during Coronet is even more ferocious than Kyushu. The defenders know this is the end. There is no fallback line, no second island, no evacuation. Every unit is ordered to fight until destruction. Every civilian is expected to resist. Entire neighborhoods of Tokyo have been converted into fortresses. Schools, temples, and apartment blocks are reinforced with concrete and steel scavenged from bombed factories. Underground tunnels connect city blocks like veins beneath the streets. Snipers wait in places no soldier expects. Children carry messages, women carry explosives. The line between combatant and civilian ceases to exist. American commanders respond with calculated savagery. Artillery barrages flatten districts before infantry moves an inch. Strategic bombers operate almost continuously, not to terrorize, but to clear ground. Napalm turns urban centers into blackened grids. The United States fights the only way it knows when faced with absolute resistance, by overwhelming force. But force does not eliminate cost. Every mile inland becomes a slaughter. Casualty clearing stations overflow. Medics work until they collapse. Some stop recording names. Dog tags pile up faster than they can be logged. Graves are dug in rows that stretch beyond sight. Back in Washington, President Truman faces a crisis no president has ever faced before. Casualty figures arrive daily, not estimates, confirmed numbers. The million casualty projection is no longer hypothetical, it is becoming inevitable. Congress demands answers, the public demands an end. Newspapers publish leaked memos showing that nuclear weapons existed and were not used. The question that dominates America is brutal and unavoidable. Why are our sons dying when the bomb could have ended this? Protests swell across major cities, not pacifist marches, but angry demonstrations led by veterans' families. Mothers who have lost one son and fear losing another. Fathers who survived the First World War and cannot watch history repeat itself. The political unity that defined wartime America begins to fracture. But Japan fractures faster. Food shortages become famine. Transportation collapses. Entire regions are cut off from central command. Still, surrender does not come. Radical military factions assassinate officials who even suggest negotiation. The emperor remains isolated, surrounded by hardliners who believe total annihilation is preferable to submission. American intelligence intercepts confirm the worst. Japan is willing to die entirely. So the United States escalates again. Chemical weapons, long stockpiled but never publicly acknowledged, are quietly authorized for battlefield use, not on cities, on fortified positions, caves, tunnel networks. The order is classified, the effect is devastating. Japanese resistance collapses in pockets, but the moral cost is permanent. American soldiers witness things they will never speak about. Entire underground complexes emptied of life, bodies without visible wounds, silence where gunfire once echoed. The casualty count continues to climb. By the summer of 1946, American losses surpass 800,000, dead, wounded, missing. The number is now openly discussed. 1 million is no longer a projection, it is expected. And then finally, Tokyo falls. The city is barely recognizable. What remains is a scorched shell of concrete, steel, and ash. The Japanese government collapses in chaos. Some leaders flee, some kill themselves. Others are captured hiding among civilians. The emperor survives, but the myth surrounding him does not. Japan surrenders. There is no celebration. In America, the announcement is met with silence. Flags fly, church bells ring, but there are no parades. Too many families are grieving. Too many men are coming home broken. Victory feels hollow, expensive, wrong. The war is over, but the United States that emerges from it is not the same nation that entered it. The military is exhausted. The population is traumatized.
Trust in leadership is damaged in a way that will take generations to repair. The question that haunts the country is simple. Was it worth it? And beneath that question lies a more dangerous one. If America could lose 1 million soldiers and still fight on, what kind of nation has it become? That question does not fade with peace. It grows.
1947. The United States is officially at peace. But peace does not feel like relief. It feels like exhaustion layered on top of grief. Nearly 1 million American casualties are now recorded in official histories. The number is precise enough to be printed, but too large to truly understand. Every state has lost tens of thousands. Some towns have lost entire generations of young men. In certain counties, draft boards no longer exist because there is no one left to draft. The returning soldiers do not come home as heroes in the way previous wars produced. They come home damaged, physically, mentally, morally. The invasion of Japan has left scars that do not fit neatly into speeches or parades. Hospitals expand into schools and churches. Veterans' wards become permanent fixtures. The term battle fatigue proves insufficient for what doctors are seeing. Men who cannot speak, men who cannot sleep, men who react violently to silence. The government tries to absorb the shock with money. Pensions are expanded, benefits are increased. The economy surges on paper, fueled by pent-up demand and unmatched industrial power. But beneath the numbers is a society struggling to reconcile what it paid for victory. Trust in leadership erodes. Congress launches investigations into why the invasion proceeded when alternatives existed. Hearings drag on for years. Military planners defend their decisions with charts and projections, but those arguments collapse when confronted by rows of grieving families sitting silently behind the senators. The atomic bomb becomes the central controversy of the post-war era. It is no longer seen primarily as a terrifying weapon that ended the war. In this timeline, it is seen as the weapon that was not used, the weapon that could have saved lives but didn't. This reversal changes everything about how Americans view nuclear power. Public outrage forces declassification. The existence of the bombs, their destructive capability, and the fact that multiple devices were available before the invasion are laid bare. The revelation fractures political careers overnight. Presidents do not survive the backlash. The idea that American leaders willingly chose an invasion knowing it could cost 1 million lives becomes a permanent stain on the political class. Populist movements rise on promises that this will never happen again. Isolationist sentiment returns stronger than it ever was before Pearl Harbor. The United States still has power, but it is now cautious in a way it never was before. Abroad, the consequences are just as profound. The Soviet Union watches everything: the invasion, the casualties, the political chaos. In this world, America does not emerge as a confident nuclear superpower that ended the war with technological supremacy. It emerges bloodied, traumatized, and internally divided. The Cold War still begins, but on different terms. Without the shock of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, nuclear weapons do not carry the same psychological dominance. They are feared, yes, but not revered as war-ending tools. The arms race accelerates faster, not slower, as nations assume that even atomic weapons may not be decisive. America's moral authority is weaker. Its voice in rebuilding Europe is challenged. Its warnings to other nations carry less weight. The image of the invincible liberator has been replaced with something darker: a nation that wins wars by grinding itself and its enemies into dust. Japan, meanwhile, is shattered beyond recognition. The invasion leaves deep resentment that no occupation policy can erase. Reconstruction is slower. Cooperation is fragile. The close alliance that defined the real post-war world never fully forms. Japan becomes a dependent state, not a partner. Its memory of the war is dominated not by atomic fire, but by invasion, famine, and total collapse. The cultural consequences ripple outward.
Hollywood struggles to tell stories about the war. There are no clean narratives, no triumphant endings. Films focus on loss, futility, and psychological ruin. War stops being romanticized for a generation. The military itself changes. Doctrine shifts away from mass invasions at all costs. Precision, deterrence, and overwhelming preemptive force become priorities, not out of mercy, but out of fear of repeating Japan. Chemical and nuclear weapons are no longer last resorts. They are framed as tools to prevent national suicide. By the late 1940s, the phrase, "another downfall," becomes shorthand inside the Pentagon for a war America cannot afford to fight. And yet, despite everything, the United States remains standing. Its economy recovers, its population grows again, its industrial engine continues to dominate the world. The country absorbs the trauma the way it absorbs everything else, slowly, painfully, but effectively. This is the true paradox. America loses 1 million soldiers and still becomes the most powerful nation on earth. But the cost of that power is now understood. Every future war is haunted by the memory of Japan. Every president carries the shadow of the decision not to end it sooner. Every military plan includes a question that did not exist before. How many lives is victory worth? That question does not have an answer. And in the final part of this story, the consequences of that uncertainty reshape the world for decades to come.
By the early 1950s, the invasion of Japan has hardened into memory, but it has not faded. It sits beneath American life like a fault line, invisible until pressure is applied. Every major decision, foreign or domestic, eventually traces back to it. The United States still builds alliances, still funds reconstruction, still projects power, but it does so with a constant awareness of what unchecked war can demand. Military cemeteries expand across the country, some larger than small towns. Names carved into stone replace the optimism that once defined victory. Politics becomes harsher. Candidates no longer run on glory. They run on restraint, accountability, and fear. Never another downfall becomes a slogan powerful enough to win elections. Presidents are judged less on how decisively they act and more on how many American lives they keep out of harm's way. This reshapes the Cold War. When tensions rise in Berlin, Korea, and later Southeast Asia, American leaders hesitate where they once would have surged forward. The memory of Japan acts as a brake. Proxy wars are preferred. Air power replaces ground invasions. Intelligence and covert operations expand dramatically because they are cheaper in blood. Nuclear weapons finally move to the center of doctrine, not as tools of victory, but as tools of prevention. The lesson of Japan is simple and terrifying. Even overwhelming conventional power can bleed a nation dry. Atomic weapons become framed as the ultimate insurance policy against another million-death war. Deterrence becomes sacred. Mutually assured destruction is accepted not as madness, but as survival. The military-industrial complex grows faster and deeper than in the real timeline. Research, automation, long-range strike capability, and surveillance are prioritized. The goal is clear: fight wars without fighting wars. America's global dominance becomes colder, more calculating, less sentimental. It is respected, but feared in a different way. Not because it will rush in, but when it does act, it refuses to be trapped in prolonged bloodshed again. Japan's place in the world remains complicated. Occupied longer and more forcefully, it rebuilds under supervision rather than partnership. Its pacifism is not born from atomic trauma, but from invasion exhaustion. The memory of American soldiers in its cities lingers for generations.
Relations stabilize, but never warm completely. Culturally, the United States carries a permanent scar. Memorials outnumber monuments. Veteran stories dominate literature, not as tales of triumph, but as warnings. Schools teach the invasion of Japan as a turning point where America learned the limits of its own power. The myth of effortless victory dies there. Yet, paradoxically, America's dominance endures. The nation adapts. It always does. Its economy remains unmatched. Its technology accelerates. Its influence stretches across oceans. Losing 1 million soldiers does not destroy the United States, but it does mature it brutally, violently, and permanently. This is the final truth of this alternate history. The invasion of Japan does not break America. It breaks America's innocence. From that point forward, every decision is heavier. Every war is measured against the beaches of Kyushu and the ruins of Tokyo. Every leader knows that the nation can survive unimaginable loss, but only once. And that knowledge becomes the quiet force that shapes the modern world. Not triumph, not mercy, but memory. A memory written in blood, carried forward as a warning, paid for by 1 million lives, and never forgotten.